anyway, so John and I did that, and then I said, all right, I'd love to start recording it. I was like, do you want to have a vocal mic and a keys mic and get a scratch and then lay down the piano? He was like, no, I know it. And so I went back in the control room and we recorded it, and he played like the whole piano part, just a click, with nothing, like no reference, just nailed it, one take, and then did 6 vocal takes, sat, comped it himself, and then was like, I have to go now. And then went home. And it was so boss. I was like, man, Mr. EGOT, so good.
You're like, oh, what do you need me for?
Yeah, well, we wrote the song together, but you know, just like those things where it's fun to see like the opposite of a tortured artist, I think. Like to see people who are really like just pros, like going in and they've prepared, they've mentally prepared, they have years of practice, years of experience. Like that to me is like, that's what I'm inspired to be. I don't want to like Van Gogh my ear someday, you know?
Yeah, hopefully not. I mean, yeah. Now I'm just thinking in my head about it because there's always that interesting debate about, you know, an artist being happy versus an artist being sad. But, you know, it's interesting for you when you think about, this is something we've talked so much about songwriting, and when you think about, you know, when you work with someone like John Legend, when you're working with someone like Selena Gomez or writing for her, whatever it is, right? You know, you're putting yourself somewhat in the mind of someone else, so it's interesting. How does that then come back into your own songwriting, and have you noticed it already impacting your writing when you start to like, you know, do more stuff?
Yes, I mean, I started out in my kind of life, and again, I was really young at the time, but I used to sort of envision my life being like playing in a band, writing songs for a band, all of everything happening within the kind of nucleus component of that band. And so anything I wrote then went through the filter of that band. It was given to the 3 guys that I was in a garage with, and we made everything. I think as it branched out into having collaborative relationships with other artists and just being the producer or the songwriter or both for somebody else, it narrowed my focus in my own music to a place of like semi-autobiographical content, where I was like, I'm only really interested in singing songs that I feel that only I can sing. When you work with other people whose voices you feel are much superior to your own, you reevaluate what merits you singing them. If you're like, this song would sound so much better with this person singing it, it's hard to be like, well, I'm still gonna sing it. And so I think the songs that I keep for myself, I have a kind of a feeling of like, well, I don't know that that other people are gonna feel even honest singing these songs because they're so autobiographical, they're so personal. And I think that was a kind of a healthy moment of like distinguishing, you know, what would live in my world and what would be for other people.
See, it's so funny because that's such an interesting sort of test because, look, dude, as we talked about, every artist is an absolute perfectionist, and every artist is like, not quite good enough, not quite, you know, like, okay, or you're like, oh, my voice isn't quite good enough, you know, like, you know, whoever should sing the song. So it's interesting for you. Was there a moment for you recording where you started to feel like, okay, you know what, this is like
good,
where you felt like comfortable with like, this is it, and
I was trying to produce music from the time I was like 13, like every day for like 7 or 8 years before I made anything that I was like, I like the way this sounds. I would make things that friends of mine were nice about, whether they were lying to me or being honest about. They'd be like, this sounds cool, but I could always hear through my attempt at a thing to like where it should have gone, and it took me so long to just make things that sounded the way that I intended for them to sound. And that's just honestly like just repetition and doing the same thing over and over, and in my case, like watching a lot of Pensato's plays on YouTube, and like, you know, I think there's just a real value in sticking with something, and like there was never some solid like breakthrough moment for me in music production specifically where I didn't know what I was doing and then I knew what I was doing. I still kind of don't know what I'm doing. I've just done it for a while.
it's funny though, because I think this happens for everyone as well. Have there been those moments then where you realize like, because again, as I talk about, and you and I have talked about, because I talk to everyone, when you're in the midst of something, there is no perspective.
Sure.
So you're doing it and you're kind of like, okay, I don't know, and you don't really get time to think about it. So are there moments now where you can kind of look back on it and be like, Oh, okay, that was from a production standpoint as well as a writing standpoint, where you're like, shit, that was good.
Well, sometimes I'll like listen back to some other. It's all depending on like a period of self-loathing. If I'm in the midst of a thing and it's not how I want it to be, I'll listen back to some other thing that I've made and I'll be like, where's this guy? Where's the guy that made this thing that's good? Why isn't he here? But it was just me. I just had better ideas that day. But you know, I think that's everybody says this like songwriting, music production, engineering. It's all a little bit like sand sculptures. Like you make it, and if you like whatever you do, it just blows away after that because it doesn't lend itself to the next thing. The whole goal is making original things every time. So it's like making one thing that you're really proud of. It's like your goal is to not repeat that thing. You know?
Well, that's interesting though, because I think for most artists as well, the thing is, as I talk about with people all the time as well, look, you're never going to perfect your sound because the moment you do, it's like, okay, cool, I'm done. What do I have to strive for? But what does happen is you find these little sort of moments of truth or these glimmers where you're just like, that's where I see myself growing as an artist, because that's been the case for you as both a writer and a producer, where you're just like, okay, that little, you know, that little beat right there, or that lyric is like, that's what I want to do.
My feeling is that everybody starts out as like an emulator. Like you listen to music, you watch the behind the scenes videos, you watch people's tour bus tours, you watch people's interviews of them in a studio working on a song, and you copy. You know, you make songs that have similar sounds, you follow their approaches, and that's how learning works. I think the pivot is that I really don't think you're gonna like break ground in any way unless you're doing something that's very different from everything else. And you know, there's obviously like through lines, there are common threads, but I think that it's a funny thing because we all love the music that we love, innately usually, and then we set out to make music that we'll also love. And oftentimes we're like trying to make music that sounds like the music you love, and that kind of never really scratches the itch. The only thing that'll scratch the itch is if you stumble upon something and you go like, that's a really new, weird combo. This is a specific example, kind of an odd one, but like I produced this song really called Bellyache a couple years ago, and it's a reggaeton beat, which is that like, and then there's just like acoustic guitar over it, and just those two things in the music that I was listening to at the time were like not combined in the way that they were combined in that song, and I was like, this is very odd, but that's why I'm going to roll with it, because I feel like people are going to at least be interested the first time they hear it, because it doesn't sound like everything that people are hearing right now.
It's so funny when you look back on it, because again, like we talked about, you know, you need that time for perspective. When you look back on that earliest stuff you did, do you now see the artist that you were quote unquote emulating, or do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
totally. The first song we really put out was this song Ocean Eyes, and that was in many ways like a real sort of like Hail Mary pass to artists that we loved, like Lapsley and Aurora. And you know, I mean, we've always been really open about our influences and our inspirations, and you know, I think hopefully you can always kind of tell where we're sort of paying tribute to someone that we love. But yeah, I mean, I think those first, what happens with a catalog is if you work with someone with a catalog or you build a catalog, eventually you can just be self-referential. You can just move to your own catalog and kind of evolve from that. You no longer have to like look outside. I always got kind of pissy when people would bring in like reference songs, because I was always like, I don't want to make your reference song. I just want to make a new song. And people play you like these songs, like, and oftentimes it's just like whatever, like the hit of the, like I bet, and I haven't had this happen this year, but I bet so many producers this year just got brought like Old Town Road. And then it's like, I want to make Old Town Road. And producers were probably like, you know, it's so annoying.
Wait, now I'm curious, how many producers are in the room? How many producers were brought to Old Town Road? Show of hands.
Good, none, great. What's the breakdown of this room? How many songwriters in the room? A bunch of songwriters. How many producers? Like a similar bunch of people. How many like friends of a person who's excited to be here?
That's very honest, I appreciate that. Alright, so it's funny, I mean, when you think about this, you know, I always ask people, because I come from a writing standpoint, but to you, what is the greatest produced song of all time? That one song where you think
My favorite production of all time is Mr. Brightside.
Really?
Because, here's why I think it's so great. I'm a big fan. There's a lot of like production technique minutia that producers can geek out over. But I feel like anyone can get behind like creative panning in a song. And so Mr. Brightside starts with just guitar hard pan to your left ear, and then the vocal comes down the center, but it's really muffled, and then the drums come down the right ear, and then when it breaks out of the first verse and the second verse, it like all crashes into like high def. It's the most satisfying moment. It's like the same thing kind of happens on Less I Know the Better by Tame Impala, but it's a great like really broad stroke thing that everybody can get behind, like sounding cool without having to have had like a year of like study production to understand why it's so great. And the song is great, and I'm a fan of production not getting in the way of a great song. You hear every line of that song, guitars sound great, synth is great.
This is interesting. For you being a producer, is there someone that you would want to work with have them produce you? Is there someone that you would feel comfortable with, or you feel like, just from like we talked about that experience of being able to learn, someone you'd want to watch in the studio on a daily basis?
There's like an infinite number of people that I would want to spend time with in a creative space and experiment, learn from, ask questions, but on a personal level, no. I think like, there's a phrase by some person smarter than me, but I'm gonna misquote, but the phrase is a camel is just a horse designed by committee. And the meaning behind that is just that if too many people have opinions about one thing, the thing gets misconstrued and malformed. And I'm a real believer in like singularity in art. So I think as a producer, like I almost always prefer to just make things alone. But that being said, so many of my friends are producers who I love, and we get together, we jam, we play each other songs that we're excited about, and we talk for hours, and that's how I imagine we're both getting better. But again, like my relationship with other musicians is much less creatively collaborative than it is just kind of like conversational and collaborative.
Well, it's interesting, since we have so many songwriters and producers in the room, as we talked about, I mean, are there sort of like, in terms of tips that you would offer for people in terms of starting out, and more so, not in how do you make a hit record, but in terms of finding your voice as an artist?
Dude, it's so hard. I always felt like when I was sitting in panels like this as an audience member, and I've been to so many of them as an audience member, like nobody had a great piece of advice to give. Everything's so different. But I think that's kind of like the thing that would be important to always remember is like everybody has like a different starting point, a different breakthrough, a different method, a different thing that works for them. And then I think that the thing that we should all be shying away from is somebody telling us that because the thing that we're making is similar to someone else's thing, it's right or wrong. It only really matters if you make something that you love. That's my basic advice.
So for you as an emulator, it's funny, you talked about, you know, like when you start out, obviously, as everyone does, you talked about Ocean Eyes being sort of a Hail Mary. What was that moment for you, or can you look back on it? You say there wasn't a particular breakthrough, but when you look back on the chronology where you sort of feel like, okay, this was where I started to become Finneas myself versus Finneas the emulator. And you mentioned, of course, Bellyache being one, but it's funny because, like you say, there's not one specific, but like when we did the Turning Point podcast, there's not one thing.
Right.
So when you trace the chronology,
now looking back, honestly, and I really have been thinking about this a lot. I think the moment you realize you've done something unique is when you hear it ripped off, or you know, copied or imitated, or whatever the politer word is for that. But now I've heard a lot of. I saw a tweet the other day that was a list of like new genres, like genres that 2020 is, and one of the genres they listed was Billie Light-ish. And I hear a lot of like fake Billie now, and so I think first of all there are benefits to that. I'm sure as like a clothing designer would say too, it's like if somebody else imitates your brand, you evolve your brand. You know, you stay ahead of the curve, and I think that it pushes us to do that. When we hear people making music that sounds like the record that we put out earlier this year, it makes us go like, or I'm sorry, last year, now it's January. It makes us go like, okay, time to do something totally new and totally different. And I think there's positives to that, but I think that is also the moment you go like, oh man, I did make something that was different. than the stuff that I grew up listening to because I can hear that thing being imitated. As opposed to like when you first start out, you just are like, I can tell that I'm imitating, Green Day or whatever.
Well, I won't ask you to call out names, but is there one track, or I won't ask you for the name of the track?
I can't do it.
No, I know, but is there just a moment where you heard something and you're just like, dude, that's just like me? And I won't ask you who it is, but what moment where you heard it yourself?
Well, listen, on a hubris level, if I hear something that I think I'm inspired, I usually don't think that because I think we all, like, if you're creative, like, you're hearing the differences between what you made and what someone else made, and you're also remembering how many things you were inspired by to make whatever you made. So it's very like, it's a little bit arrogant to assume that you were the thing that inspired it. The moment I realized was that I had like all my friends text me this one day and they're like, did you work on this one song? And I'm like, nope. So that was the turning point of going like, if other people think I did something, not mine.
But it's interesting what you say about the evolution, because I remember talking a billion thousand years ago with Tricky, the British trip hop artist, and he was talking about the fact that he was actually chased out of his sound because after Maxine became such a hit, everyone was like wanted to make trip hop. So it's just for you, does it become a pressure? Does it become a motivation to say, okay, cool, well now there's Billie Eilish. So now I'm doing, like work on to the next thing because, well now someone made, there was Coke and now someone made Coke Zero, so it's like,
The benefit of all of that is that there are so many artists pushing the envelope right now. We can't lay into any of that in kind of its entirety. There's so many artists that are cross-pollinating genres. There's such a whether you're loving it or not, the kind of emo resurgence in rap music is so cool to me, and such a sort of new branch off of a genre. And I think all of that stuff is just about what you're personally resonating with. What's authentic, and then to be totally truthful, all of it goes back to taking away all the kind of sonic components. It's all just about the songs. It really is. It's about the song. A kid is gonna stand at a cheap mic in the middle of Vancouver and busk. That's the thing that you can make that gets to live forever. And great songs haven't changed ever. A great song, you can always tell a great song. You know what I mean? Those Beatles songs translate today, Elvis songs translate today, Sinatra songs translate today, Nat King Cole songs, they all just live so much longer than whatever producer, did whatever dubstep song in 2011,
Well, it's interesting because with that in mind, again, as a writer and as a producer, everything, as an artist, everyone's so self-critical. So for you, was there one moment or one song where you've written where you can now take a step back and be like, you know what, I feel like this song will live. This is a song that you can, or even a lyrical passage, because also as a writer, so often stuff just comes to you almost.
Yeah, sure.
So it's or is there a passage?
Lucky, yeah, sure.
If there's a passage where you feel like, you know what, that was just special.
There's a song of Billie's called I Don't Want to Be You Anymore, and the chorus specifically, I remember writing that song, and that was kind of an immediate, I was I bet kids, and I think it was because I hadn't written it from a place of I'm gonna try to write a single or something. I just was trying to write a song, and once I stepped back and looked at it, I thought, whatever this song is making me feel, I bet it's gonna translate. I bet kids are gonna cover this a lot, and that was always to me, a thing that to me, when a kid decides to cover a song, that's holy grail. Because everybody that starts playing an instrument starts with playing their favorite songs. So to me, that was always a big deal. And that song specifically, I was I bet kids are gonna cover this. And they have, which is really sweet. And that's given that song, in terms of what blows up a song, which is these days TikTok a lot of the time, but at that point it's there's so many songs that have blown up from covers on TV shows, covers on Glee back in the day when Glee was huge. And to me, I was I think the song's gonna have a big life of covers, which is really satisfying.
So you say everyone, starts off playing their favorite song. What was the first song you learned to play?
I learned how to play Beautiful Disaster by John McLaughlin on piano. It was a pretty song, and I was 11. And it's a really deep song about just life. And it's one of those songs that I was looking out the back window of my mom's Toyota Sienna. It was several years old, many car accidents passed, and just looking out the window and just being life is hard. It's 11.
That's so funny when you look back on it and be
one of the first songs I ever wrote, which was literally, I was 11 years old, one of the lines was, "I've been running for so long now." And I think listen back and I was like, from what? 11.
School, lunch, recess, where were you running from?
Doesn't make sense at all.
It's so funny. You know what's interesting about that, though, on a serious note, is I've talked to so many writers who then look back at stuff and they find these recurring themes in their music. Or like they talk about lyrics being sort of prophetic. So it's funny, when you look back at that lines like I've been running so long, whatever the hell you were running from, dodgeball or whatever.
Kid, I don't put much stock in it.
Do you now go back and as you talk about the catalog, do you see sort of recurring themes in the things you write about?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been, intensely romantic in the way that I live my life, and so writing love songs, writing songs about heartbreak have always just been a reflection of like how I've lived my life. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I see myself having done quite a bit is like trying to take turns of phrase and then twist them a little bit, trying to be kind of like my fantasy song is like something that has like an instant familiarity and then goes to a place that you never would expect it to go to. That's like my fantasy as a songwriter.
So what's an example of someone else having achieved that?
I think Bohemian Rhapsody is the best example of all time with that, where it has like a real sound at the start of it, and then by the time it gets to Mama, Just Kill the Man, like it's already somewhere else, and then that like big, huge motif that it hits, like there's so many turns in that are so exciting.
It's interesting because when you say that, I think of them like a song like Stairway to Heaven. So does that,
same deal.
Yeah, does that mean we'll ever hear like the 10-minute Finneas epic?
Maybe. I think I would probably be more likely to do 3 or 4 songs that are recorded as one and then chopped for Spotify. I think we're at a point with instant gratification where, because kids aren't dropping a needle on vinyl anymore, I want to give people okay, here's an example. This is a short-term example, but at the start of the album we put out, there's like the sound of us like popping our Invisalign out of our mouth, and then it drops straight to the bad guy. And initially that was all just going to be part of the bad guy, and Billy was like, people are not going to want to hear us cracking each other up over every time they want to hear bad guy. They're just not going to want to. And a billion streams later, I'm really glad she decided to take that off.
I'm so curious, for how many people in this room want to hear them cracking each other up
every time
before they hear bad guy?
No, you just want to hear that boom, 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 boom. You just want that every time.
I want to play devil's advocate and hear and respect things, because I think that what it is, you guys have such fun, and that comes across in the music. And I think that's an essence of, okay, maybe not, but that essence of honesty, and I think that's so much of what connects with people is like, you feel that closeness, and you feel like, okay, we're having fun doing this, versus like, oh, well, like you said, when you saw like, I Don't Want to Be You, you're not trying to sit there and be like, okay, well, this is going to be #1 this week, or whatever, So talk about that too, and that relationship and that sort of closeness, and those moments where you can feel it as well, where you guys are just sitting there having a blast, and you're like, this is just fucking fun.
Well, a sense of humor in songwriting has always been hugely important to me. Even in the most serious song you've ever written, to me it's really important. In the case of like Bad Guy, I think just as like a songwriting study, there's so much about that song that is irreverent and that doesn't take itself seriously, and I really don't think that song works without that. I think without jokes like Mike Seduce Your Dad type, like there's just like lines in that are like purely satirical, like joke lyrics that I think really soften the blow of like somebody arms akimbo calling themselves the bad guy. I think you really want to make sure that you're creating a character. I mean, I think like just in movies, like the funniest villains are always the scariest villains, the ones that like are laughing about it. That's why everybody's so obsessed with the Joker. It's like hilarious, and also like thinks everything's funny. It's just like it sort of catches you off guard. People that are like 100% serious all the time, it's not interesting to have a interaction with those people. So I think musically, that's always been really important to us. And again, it's like you can write a really sad song and still put in a line that doesn't take itself too seriously,
It's also interesting because it's going back to what we're talking about, the music, that you make versus you're happy versus when you're sad. I think one thing of it too, dude, it is freaking hard to write comedy. That is a real skill set. So to you, who are some of the best comedy writers? Or like
music?
In both music and just in general, because again, when you think about, those things that make you really laugh.
Well, Randy Newman has as far as like being a musician who is not regarded as like comedic sing. Like I'm talking like from Bo Burnham, who writes like comedy songs that are like a punchline of a song that I love. There's a song called From the Perspective of God that I think is awesome. But I think it's, you go into that song knowing that like there are punchlines in the song. And then I think Randy Newman, conversely, is just a musician that people think of as a musician that happens to be like incredibly dark and funny with his lyrics about himself. And that to me is like aspiration, you know, to be that like self-aware and to be that willing to like mock yourself really.
Is there a song where you feel like you've gotten that, where you can look back on it again from that perspective and say like, okay, dude, I can see where I was really having, like, as you say,
myself.
Yeah.
I don't think I've done a good enough job about it yet. Yeah, that's like it's a goal of mine. I don't think I've hit it. I don't think I've written a song that's like, you know, got that yet. It's something I'm trying to do.
When we look back at it, you have all these people who waited in line for this panel, right?
Yes.
People come here. What is the one thing that you would love for people to take away? And it's kind of similar, we talked about the advice earlier, but is there, you know, like, because I think the thing that was interesting to me was talking about the stick with it, because I think it's one thing that comes across, it is hard to be a musician. There is so much rejection.
It's not that hard.
It's hard to be.
There are harder things.
Well, I'm not saying there aren't harder things, but there is a lot of rejection that comes with it, and a lot of just those moments that you're like, why am I doing this to myself? And it's interesting because maybe you didn't really, because you just always knew it.
Well, it's definitely always the thing I wanted to do. I mean, I think like, and this is some like Gary Vaynerchuk bullshit advice, but you know, there are so many things that are only worth doing if you don't want to do anything else. And I think kind of any part of the music industry is that. I mean, I think like, I'm a big believer in like everybody having a favorite thing. Like when I talk to friends of mine who are like, I just don't know what I want to do. I don't necessarily know that I believe that. I feel that they don't know what they want to do within the confines of what the professional world of careers and career goals is telling them that. But maybe they just like love Fortnite, and I think that's totally fine. There's like millionaire streamers now. I think, you know, as far as like what music goes, like my like pie in the sky goal always as a musician was that I wanted to one day be able to not do other things. I wanted to be able to just support myself and pay my rent and buy my food off of something that I've done with music. And at first that was like, you know, maybe I'll be like a janitor at a studio, or maybe I'll clean an SSL board, or I'll be the personal assistant to somebody there. But it never veered from that, from being like, I want to be in the world of music, I want to be around music all day. I don't want to work at a job serving some higher about something that I'm not passionate about. Because at the end of the day, like, the coolest part about the music industry to me is that you get any executive talking about what band changed their life in high school, you have a passionate conversation for 45 minutes. Everybody in the music industry just needs to love music, and pretty much everybody does. And I think that, like, if you are here and you love making music, whatever your view on yourself and your own success is and where you are and your desired career path, if you love music and you're here, like, you kind of won already because you know what you love. So, congrats.
It's so funny that you say like your goal was always to make music and you knew you were going to do that. Because you're saying that, I was cracking up inside. I'm a huge Springsteen fanatic, right? So in '84, when he had Born in the USA, which became like the #1 thing, there's a song, Rosalita, where he talks about, it's a great song, he talks about the record company gave me a big advance. When he would do it live, he's like, well, you know, you should be with me because, he's like, you wouldn't even believe it. So those moments for you where you're just like, do you still have those moments where you're just like, well, this is so freaking surreal?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, on a kind of a daily basis, for sure. I mean, to me, I don't look much bigger than, like, getting, like, I've gotten to meet a lot of musicians who I have looked up to my whole life, and I think anytime, I don't take for granted the ability to tell somebody who made a piece of art that I love. It feels like a real honor to me to be able to tell somebody in person how much their music has impacted my life. So that to me is like the icing, you know?
Well, it's funny because I think, you know, what you say about the executives,
Yeah.
the thing is I tell artists too, if you ever lose that moment of fandom, that's the time to go home.
That's so true.
As soon as you're done, so last moment for you got starstruck.
We had a show in Oakland in May of last year. Billy Joe Armstrong came and I couldn't cope with it. I was completely incapacitated by that. I had nothing cool to say to him. I just was like, yeah. He was like, so what have you been listening to lately? And I was like, you. Yeah, but that's like, I think that makes a lot of sense because I think really whatever your formative identity forming, like music that you discovered on your own, that your parents didn't hand you, that your friends didn't hand you, that you really embraced, and that to me was like American Idiot when I was growing up. So it was like, that just like formation of my own opinions about music is so important to me. There have been countless artists that have had a huge impact on me throughout my life, but I think that age, where you're just like discovering things for the first time, and there's like swear words on those records, and you're like, ooh, but keep it on though. It's a big deal.
It's so funny that you say that, because I hadn't thought about it until just now, but it's like you took a look at a track like Jesus in Suburbia, and how great that song is, but that has that same epic, you know, 9 minutes.
So many unexpected places. Yeah, absolutely. It's a good example.
I feel like it's funny because you say, you know, this, I feel like at some point, I just as a fan, want to hear the epic 10-minute, you know, in this direction.
Until you're in the middle of it, then you'll be like, maybe not.
It's not cool enough to listen to records all the way through though. All right.
That's why I love you.
We're going to take 3 questions, but
Pressure's on.
yeah, I was just going to say, make them freaking good. Like, so, you know, if you have 3 quick questions that you would want to ask Finneas.
Yeah, I'll get on my podium up here. Do we have, there's a microphone. There's a microphone, and then there's a microphone, so if you want to, okay, go for it.
Do you ever feel like you want more spotlight?
No.
No?
I'm on stage.
Can you tell me a little bit more about, with your songwriting process, when you're going through and you get a song done and you've got your lyrics and you're like, this was great, but then you look over them. What is that editing process for you? Like, when do you know these are the lyrics you want to put out? And when are you like, I need to work on these?
I just write another song at that point. I write a song until it's done, and then it's done, unless I like hate something going back. Unless I sing it and there's like a line that I'm like, oh, it's so embarrassing. But other than that, usually it's a linear process. I don't really edit. By the time it's over, and then I'll just go right to song 2.
Thank you. So Billy's voice is already unique, but I want to know what plugins or techniques that you use for.
Are you ready? Here's the secret sauce. Low cut, Logic, stock, EQ, compressor, high ratio, low threshold.
It's not also honest that you didn't have to be here. Thank you very much.
I did have to be here. They held me at gunpoint.
I'm sorry, and thank you.
No, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming and listening.
So you mentioned earlier that out Westlake there's some really cool pianos there. Do you have any favorite room instrument combo that inspired something that we might recognize?
Ooh, I like that. That's really cool. I moved out of my parents' house into a house in the neighborhood and was finishing up with the song "I Love You" at the time, and my like studio room at the new house sounded like impossible. Like it sounded so echoey. I had no furniture. I didn't own anything. I just had like an empty box of the house. But the reverb sounded great on guitar, so it worked out.
What kind of guitar was it? Just real quick.
A blue Fender. What kind of guitar was it, Trevor? Newport. Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate it.
So I'm glad I got to tell you in person that I love music that you make, and I also really respect the fact that you mentioned like stock plugins, and like, you know, because I think as a producer sometimes you get overwhelmed with the amount of stuff out there, the amount of like things you can buy for yourself to sound better. But I think one thing that's universal is capturing a mood or a vibe. That's something I try to do. So, short 2-part question: what do you think are the elements of like Billie Eilish's mood when you work with her?
Whatever it is at the time.
Good, cool. Cool. And then, in general, when it comes to like capturing a vibe or a mood in a song, what is your approach to that? Because I think that's the most important thing. Do you have an approach to capturing a vibe?
It's a really good question. I wish I had like a super solid answer to that. I think it depends on like what sonics I think will be the most emotive of that. If I want something to be intense, it has to be direct to me. It has to have like a place that will take your heartbeat. Like tempo is super important to me. Slowing things down, speeding them up, seeing how your body reacts to that, super important. I try not to limit myself to like specific tones or anything, or specific instruments, but that's the kind of broad.
Thank you so much.
So,
Of course.
We got to wrap it.
Yeah, sorry everybody.
We're out of time, but just a quick note. Finneas is not going to be doing a meet and greet now, so please don't rush the stage. But I know everybody wants a picture, but you know, sorry, I got to be the asshole, but you know. Anyway, but dude, this was amazing.
Thank you so much for being here.